Good morning, everyone. So we'll get started for this session on small satellite application development, leveraging social and economic benefits. My name is Steve Beauchanger. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Euroconsult. Big pleasure to be with you this morning and moderate this session. This session is hosted by HED Aerospace. So I think we're going to start with a short video introducing HED, please.
Space carries the glory and dream of the nation and leads the future high-tech developments of the world. How can space technology help us to improve our life with sustainable development? Innovation, collaboration, transformation are the vision of HED Aerospace. Since our foundation in 2007, we've been continuously establishing our international footprint through collaborations. We've founded 2 subsidiaries in Netherlands and in France. Today, we have 400 worldwide partners and customers. HED has been an incubator for global organizations looking to establish presence in the Chinese space market. With our global partners, we contributed to 100 space engineering projects over the last 10 years. On November the 15th, 2017, HED-1, the first satellite of our Skywalker constellation, was launched successfully. We engaged to provide innovative solutions to transform our life with sustainable development, making our aerospace to become a truth. Our Skywalker constellation will be a data fusion approach of AIS, IoT, and Earth observation technology. We will provide cost-effective applications to millions of people in the world with global AIS and ADS-B services. As the backbone of international trading and economy, smart tools with data collection systems and IoT services will connect the world. Artificial intelligence and big data technologies will help us to have a clear and clean observation of the Earth. Integrated, accessible, reliable solutions are essential to support agriculture, forestry, environmental protection, maritime, aviation, communication, and IoT sectors. We would need you to contribute in the global sustainable development. We're stepping in a new era to support the national initiative, the Belt and the Road. Through our vision, the Silk Road of Space, we will establish satellite application ecosystem. We would want you to join us as a global partner to improve our daily life through satellite applications, to leverage socio-economic benefits to our citizens, and to make life better for everyone.
Good. So a few words introducing this session. So we're going to speak about small satellites and applications and how they generate benefits for the end users. We have a great panel with a much diversity of players in the space business. Small sats has been, as you know, at the heart of the transformational growth of this industry for the last few years. This growth and this transformation is even accelerating in the next few years, and we are going to discuss how this is bringing, how this is developing new applications and further benefits across countries and end users. These, especially small satellite developments and new applications, and small sat players in general, all go into the direction of bringing space with more affordability and accessibility to end users, and I think it's going to be interesting to see with these different players how this is happening. So let me introduce our speakers today. I'll start from my right with Camille Brun, head of global business development at China HED Aerospace, a longtime friend. On her right, Valanathan Munsami, CEO of the South African National Space Agency. We have as well Mr. Driss El Hadani, Director General of the Centre Royal de Télédétection Spatiale, the remote sensing center of Morocco. And last but not least, Mr. Jorge Del Rio Vera, Space Applications Section at the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs. as Camille, you are hosting the session, maybe you want to give a few words?
Good morning. I'm Camille Brown from China Head Aerospace. So thank you all of us to come to attend this section. Also, thank you IAF to organize the GNF panel. And thank you for our panelists. Thank you, Val from Sensor, come and accept our invitation to speak here. Thank you, Dries from CRTS. Also, thank you, Jorge from United Nations to come. And it's it's a great opportunity that you accept the invitation and come to share with us your opinion. Thank you, Steve, as well, to be our moderator. I'm sure that we have a very interesting panel. And do you have some slides?
Yeah, some slides maybe first. Can we show the first slides? If we can have the slides, I just want to introduce the session with a few numbers. As we are speaking about small satellites and market development. Exactly, thank you. Just like to show you, I'm going to be very brief because I would like to leave the floor to our speakers. Just to give you some numbers, so about small sat market and how they develop it, that's working. Yeah, so small sat market in 2017, just to give you a few numbers and showing the dynamism of this business. Last year we had 330 small sats that were launched. As you can see on the top left of this chart, is much higher than any of previous years. It's basically twice as much as the average launches but the preceding 9 years. So very, very much dynamic. And Earth observation was clearly driving this growth, as it is the first application for SmallSat today with 2/3 of this domain. Interestingly, one company actually launched 44% of all the satellites that was planned for their constellation expansion. So how is that going forward? So our forecast for the next 10 years, we are forecasting 7,000 satellites about to be launched. So that's, if you do a simple math, about twice as much as last year per year. So strong growth in terms of small satellite developments. And here, even we are not taking all the announced projects. It's our forecast, but if you take all the single projects that we have in the market, we will be far above 20,000 small sats. So, so on these 7,000 small sats that we are forecasting to launch, they are driven especially by two big applications: telecom with the broadband constellation, the mega constellation. That's interesting because in the past, Earth observation was clearly driving in the future with the mega constellation that should definitely represent the majority of launches. Here, I think we are forecasting like three mega constellations to be launched globally. Earth observation, obviously, still highly dynamic, very dynamic, with about 1,500 small sats coming from a lot of different countries, including China, and I think we're going to see this, but very, very dynamic market and supply development in China. And as well, some technology demonstrators and what we call information, which is basically M2M, IoT, AIS, narrowband, low data rate constellations that are flourishing. So extremely dynamic market in the future. And last, just want to show, because we're speaking about applications and developments, at the end, the value of this business in the information that you're producing. And in Earth observation, there is a clear shift in the business towards what used to be the focus point of operators, which was the data cell, the data business. And clearly, the leveraging and the future of the business is on the service. So here we have the value of these commercial services, of commercial segments for data and services, with applications driving demands such as environment monitoring, infrastructure, natural resources, and so on. But the clear objective for these Earth observation players is to boost the services and the applications and develop new market with two main elements. The first one, which is leveraging low-cost data through high-frequency data sets, high-frequency data supply. through constellations and constant monitoring, but the key is really to drop and to reduce the cost of the data, and the investment in data analytics and through artificial intelligence and other means of big data analytics, which will allow to increase services and applications to end users. So I guess we're going to discuss some of these issues today. So that was for introducing the session. I would like now to start with an introduction from each of our speakers. We start with you, Camille, for head, if we can have the presentation. So we'll have presentation for each of our speakers around 5 minutes, and then after the session discussion. If we can have the slides, please. Thank you. Camille, up to you.
So, I will have a very quick presentation on our satellites and also on the future data. So who is China Head Aerospace? We are founded in 2007. We're a privately owned independent company with 2 subsidiaries in Europe, one in the Netherlands, founded in 2016, and the second one in 2018, where I'm based in. So over the last 10 years, we have been helping non-Chinese company commercializing the spaceport and services in China. And since the last few years, we started to have our interest in small sat. So right now, we are proceeding to transform our core activity from space engineering project to new space small sat operator. International cooperation and global partners are very important for us. So we were, thanks to our partners globally, we have successfully contributed to 100 missions in the space market over the last 10 years. So we have a lot of partners in Europe, but also in the African region. Our vision on new space, 3 words: innovation, collaboration, and transformation. How can we use the space technology to support sustainable developments and to provide socio-economic benefits? It will be our mission that we would like to do it with our constellation, but also with our partners globally. About our constellation plan, the Skywalker constellation, it will be a 24 small sats of 50 to 100 kilo class satellite, which is planned to be completed by 2022. It will be an AIS, IoT constellation. Also, we provide narrowband communication, and we're considering the option to host EO payload. The first satellite, which called HAT-1, was successfully launched in 2017. As we are a Chinese headquarter company with European subsidiaries, we take the advantage to use commercial options, not only China, but also globally, to have the best quality and best accessible space components on our constellation plan. And we are looking for partners to jointly operate and also use our constellation. On top of our own constellation plan, we also have a strategic partnership with our Chinese national Earth observation operator. Today, you can imagine, but we already have 16 to 17 EO civilian Earth observation satellites on orbit. It includes very high resolution of 0.5 meter daily revisit optical data, up to 2 meter resolution data, which is very useful for agriculture. And we also have radar satellites, and we also have one geostationary satellite, which was launched already in 2015. And this year, we launched the Galfan satellite, which is also a very powerful satellite with hyperspectral data, which will be very useful for some application that we cannot really explore in the past. So, well, I'm not here to only talk about data, because what we just saw the presentation of Steve, that data is 1.4. I mean, the market size is not quite big, but if you talk about the edge service side, it could be 3 times bigger in the world. So let's say we had already looked on how many satellites to be launched in the coming decade. 1,500, right, of EO satellites is expected in the next decade. So we believe that big data and artificial intelligence will be a very important focus for us in the near future. In China, we expect, I mean, for the national side, we will have maybe between 30 to 50 satellites. We also have our own constellation plan. So what are we going to do with all this data? So we would like to go beyond the data to the application side to provide application based on big data, but also artificial intelligence, to provide application for the end user who don't even know what is space. We talk about this panel, the topic is socio-economic benefits. Key figures in Africa, like example, agriculture represent 20 to 30% of GDP of the region, of the continent. And in 2017, it represented 15% of the GDP of Morocco. For maritime, actually Africa is the world's largest island with 4 oceans surrounding, with more than 100 shipping ports, representing 6% of global seaborne trade. Mining, 22 to 35% of GDP of the world. South Africa and Angola represent already 60% of the region value of GDP. So how can we use satellites to leverage socio-economic benefits? And so I don't have much time here to share off with all the case studies that we're doing, but one pilot project that we want to share, we did a pilot project by using satellite images, institute data, machine learning, and AI to do the soybean yield prediction management in Inner Mongolia this year. The idea is to get involved the end user since the beginning of the project to define what are the needs and also to get them understand that why they need to use satellite-based technology on top of what they are used to do in the last 30 years. So it is my final slide. I would like to invite you as part of our partners to help us to develop a sustainable ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camille. Okay, so we'll move to South Africa now with Mr. Munsami for the National Space Agency of South Africa.
Okay, thank you, Steve, and thanks for the opportunity. I just want to caution, despite the topic, the conversation is not about satellites. It's around the socio-economic benefits from satellites. And I say this because there are many emerging or developing countries have this Me Too syndrome. When can we build a satellite? It's not about the satellite, it's what can you do about the satellite. So I just want to share a very pragmatic approach in terms of what developing countries need to do, and this is the South African experience. So when we started the space program, essentially what we did was to get a whole host of government ministries around the table and ask them, what do you want from the space program? And as you see in this room, there were very different ministries represented. And what we did is we took their user priority requirements and we clustered them, and we essentially came with 3 priority areas: environmental resource management, health, safety, and security, and then innovation and economic growth. And then under each of those clusters, you can see a series of priorities. Okay? The question is then, how is this relevant to government's priorities? So in South Africa, we have 3 key instruments of the current administration. There's a 9-point plan in terms of what we want to achieve. There's a national development plan leading up to 2030 in terms of what's needed to take South Africa forward. And then we have what is called the triple challenges in South Africa: inequality, poverty, and there's one more, sorry. Inequality, poverty, and unemployment, sorry. So those are the 3 challenges. And the question you ask is, how does these priority areas impact on each of those? Okay? And so we did the mapping and to demonstrate that space is very relevant to the priorities of government. And obviously, most countries have signed up to the SDGs, and you've got to ask yourself, how does satellite platforms help to impact the implementation on the SDGs? So in establishing the space program, you've got to put the key priorities right at the top, and then you ask the question, how does Earth observation, communications, navigation, space exploration impact on that? What sort of infrastructure, human capital, international partnerships, industry participation? And then you look at your missions. So in looking at the missions, you put your priorities down, and you ask yourself, from an Earth observation perspective, what is the different spatial resolutions required for each of those user requirements? What's the temporal frequency? What's the geographic coverage? And then you also ask the question, is navigation in positioning important, communications, and space exploration? So this is a mapping of what we've done as an outcome of identifying the priority areas. And then the question is, what do we need? So satellites are a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. And then you have to ask yourself, so what sort of pathways do we need to follow to be able to address those user requirements? And essentially in South Africa, there's two. There's a small sat, the one on your right, which is a 450 kilogram satellite that's been designed and is currently being manufactured in South Africa. The one on the left is a CubeSat that's ready for launch. It should be launched in December this year. It's a prototype mission to look at AIS applications for ship traffic along the South African coastline. So it's just to share with you the South African experience. Thanks.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Valentin. Okay, so we'll continue with Mr. Idriss Al-Adani for the Remote Sensing Center of Morocco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Heat, for inviting me to participate to this very important session. I will build on what Val said at the beginning of the application is about applications, and I will go in the same way to share with you what we have been doing to develop applications from satellites and small satellites in our region. The vision in Morocco is that the space in general and remote sensing in particular was developed to respond to the needs of the society and to support the government, the ministerial departments and different national institutions in developing projects, programs, and in implementing these strategies on the field. And the strategy adopted to fulfill this objective, to achieve this objective, was based on a gradual methodology that is starting from very small demonstration projects and coming up to more applicative, more operational applications, and with a vision to integrate different sectors. This approach was also based on two elements. First, a strong commitment from all the sectors and from the highest level to support this approach, to develop the infrastructures, to develop the capacities. And the second element of this strategy was based on international cooperation and partnership with different actors at different levels on a bilateral and multilateral basis, so we can benefit from expertise, benefit from technology, and also contribute to develop the cooperation in the region and in our continent, Africa. Some milestones that was achieved during this period, and in 1988, it's not 1980, did a mistake, was the foundation of the Ruwais Center of Remote Sensing as a governmental institution in charge of developing the applications and the uses of space technologies, remote sensing techniques to support project development. In 2001, we have the first expertise in launching a small satellite in cooperation with the Technical University of Berlin. The objective of this small satellite was to develop national capacities in space technologies and to form a core team that will start looking at other projects. In 2001, following this launch, this foundation of the second institution in Morocco in charge of space research and space techniques, which is called the CRES. And then on a political level, Morocco was engaged to develop or to participate to the exploitation of the Galileo project by signing an MOU with the European Commission to be a part of the Galileo consortium. But I think we achieved one of the most important steps in this development in 2017 when Morocco launched the first satellites for Earth observation with a resolution of 50 centimeters last November. And we are in the process of finalizing the second launch next November to have a constellation of 2 satellites that are operational to respond to the needs of the country, but also to the needs of the region, and to be used as an instrument to develop cooperation in this field. To develop applications to strengthen the use of the satellite resources, the CRTS is playing a role in terms of developing, promoting this technology through very different ways, different means. And our main objective, our principal mission is to make this technology operational, make this technology available to the end users in different ministries. In the next slide, I will show some of the projects that are benefiting from our support to develop the use of this technology. The second is to facilitate access to data, and the end users are expressing their needs, their requirements, and our job is to make all the necessary mechanisms and tools that enable them to have access to data in an easy and very simple way. Capacity building is also one of the elements that allow the development of applications, operational applications, and we have been investing in capacity building through training, R&D activities, etc. As I said before, we have been very active to develop cooperation with different partners all around the world. Some of projects or some of the strategies that are benefiting from the application of space technologies of remote sensing, Earth observation. Morocco had developed this Plan Vert, green plan, which is aiming to develop agriculture in Morocco, and satellite data was used in different levels of this program as a producer of information for establishing the strategies, but also developing projects and feeding all the information systems and decision-making systems for this support. We are also working in the department in charge of water resources to build the vision 2030 on how we can use water, and we are developing with them at least 2 projects, one on the water economy, how can we use satellite data to support water economy and to be adapted to climate change. Renewable energy is one of the sectors that is benefiting from this, and a lot of information is provided from satellite data to support this project, and so on for this national strategy for sustainable development, geological planning as a strategic project to develop mining activities, etc. Based on this, and just to put on the table some of the challenges that we are facing in this field, the demand on satellite data is increasing rapidly. And I think that small satellites will contribute to answer this requirement, to answer these needs. But I think sustainability of this business model should be demonstrated so we can rely on this. The second element that users are more and more requiring real-time data to monitor very dynamic activities, very dynamic needs, and small satellites can maybe provide more capacities to achieve this objective, or real-time or quasi-real-time information. Camille said in one of the slides that what we need is information to support decision-making, not satellite data. And one of the challenges I think that small satellites will be facing, and we are facing right now, is how we can develop new tools, new methods to translate this satellite data into information. And I think that what we are witnessing right now in artificial intelligence is opening the way for a new era of satellite data exploitation to provide information, to provide decision-making tools to the end users. Small satellites are developing rapidly, but I think that there is some competitions on the market, on the place, and the balance is very difficult to master right now. One of the challenges also is the interoperability. We are facing a huge number of projects, small satellites, and that are launched. Accessibility of data is very easy today, but one of the problems how we can use satellite data coming from different sources with different characteristics, with different technical information, and to make it easy and transparent for the end user to use all the sources of information. And last but not least, the maturity of satellite technology to meet operational applications, which means that the ability to track things that drive from commerce around, etc. I think that we are starting a new era in Earth observation, and on the field of data acquisition, a huge step was accomplished, but I think in terms of developing tools and means to use this data, there are a lot of challenges that we have to face. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Driss. So we'll finish with Rory for the UN UN Office for Outer Space Affairs.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the organizers for having invited me. This morning, when we uploaded the presentation, we discovered that there were some technical difficulties, so I may not have slides, or I may have slides. I see the first slide at least, so that's good sign. Okay, we have the slides. So the presentation is called Bridging the Space Divide. The space divide is the gap that exists between countries that have space capabilities and those that don't have space capabilities. We are working in the United Nations in the Office for Outer Space Affairs to try to bridge this space divide. How many of you know the office? Can I see hands raised? Okay, so we are talking about half of the people. That's very good, so that allowed me to go very quickly. So the office vision is to bring the benefits of space to humankind. We do that through promoting peaceful cooperation on the useful uses of outer space. We have many different roles. One of them is being capacity building. We are providing these capacities. We are trying to help developing countries in having the capabilities to access space. And not only to access space, but to utilize data and space technologies. We are also a global facilitator because we are a UN forum. We have 87 member states that are discussing, among them INCOPOS, the Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space. So we are also helping the dialogue between member states, and we are a gateway to space in the United Nations system. Going to capacity building, I have there listed a couple of training opportunities that are related to smallsats. Basically, in these training opportunities, we are cooperating with some other entity. The two are with the Kyushu Institute of Technology in Japan, QTech, and the second one is cooperation with the Indian Space Research Organization. We are providing fellowships to help students to acquire the knowledge to actually build, design, test, and launch their small satellites. So these opportunities are open, so if you are interested in having a fellowship in one of these two institutions, you can Google it and find it online. So you can apply for the fellowship. Actually, the second one with ISRO is currently open. So, okay, you have trained people. What do you do next? You can have a small satellite, and I agree with Balanatan. I mean, it's not about having a satellite, or sometimes it is yes, because if we remember the space career, it started out of pride. So people wanted to be in space. People wanted to have their footprint in the moon. So started with pride, but that's not the end goal. That has not to be the end goal. So thanks to a program of the office, together with JAXA, the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, we are providing a launch opportunity to CubeSats for developing countries. And thanks to this opportunity, Kenya launched their first satellite this year, and they have also created the Kenyan Space Agency. So it's helping also, for instance, in Kenya, to help the society be more aware of space and putting space into the national priorities. But that cannot be the end goal. I mean, there are a few benefits, but I'm going to skip that. The end goal is what? The end goal is user needs. And 193 countries of the United Nations have signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals, 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So that means that if you want to develop applications, and you are developing an application that is monitoring or achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, the country, your country, may be more interested because they have signed up to that. And it's an agenda for everybody. It's achieving and monitoring the SDGs is for everybody. It's not for developing countries or for developed countries, for everybody. We have done a study, and space can actually contribute a lot to the Sustainable Development Goals. We did a study with the European GNSS agency and only 2 systems, Galileo and Copernicus, and space can contribute to 13 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals very significantly. And I ran out of slides. So how space can contribute to this? So if you think, let's take Sustainable Development Goal number 2, zero hunger, you consider the agricultural land, it has been stable. The agricultural land in the world is stable, has been stable for the last 25 years. Population in the last 25 years has increased by almost 2 billion people. How space can contribute to that? I leave that to the discussion round. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roy. So time flies, but we'll try to extend a little the session. So we're going to have a discussion here. If you have any question, please raise your hand, and then there should be a microphone. So as we discuss, if you have questions, if you want to comment or to ask a question to our panelists, please raise your hand. Maybe I'll start with the question for our two representatives of the space agencies, especially for starting with you, maybe Valentin. You showed us a nice matrix of applications and sectors and so on. Maybe just if you pick the three top drivers, the top three applications or sectors today driving demand for satellite data in your country, what would that be, and what are the needs to serve these top three applications?
Okay, so the first one is a big driver currently at the moment called the Oceans Pakisa. We have a coastline that's about just over 3,000 kilometers. And so our economic zone, the Oceans Economic Zone, is quite extensive. So we want to be able to patrol and use those resources effectively. So Earth observation is very key to that. Okay. So that's one area. The second is we are also a very water scarce country. We've just had a recent drought, a severe drought. And so managing our water resources is also very critical for us. And so again, Earth observation becomes very critical for that. The third one, you know, South Africa has had a checkered history. We've had a sort of segregation of our communities along racial lines. And that hasn't necessarily been addressed fully. So we have what we call spatial dislocations, where communities are still segregated in South Africa. So the question is, how do you use Earth observation, looking at the trend line as to how things are changing, and whether the country is transforming and becoming more representative in different areas? How do you use Earth observation to track whether that's happening? So that's just three examples from my side.
Three. Dries in Morocco?
Yeah, I think in the same line, the three more critical areas where remote sensing or space applications are developed in Morocco. The first one is agriculture, as we have to support the strategy of the government for food security. So satellite data is very important to monitor the development of agriculture, to provide information. For example, we are producing a mensual bulletin on the agriculture campaign, so the decision makers are informed on the situation of this in terms of the vegetation health, productivity, etc. Donc agriculture is one of the most important sectors where space data is very used. The second one is management of water resources. We are facing serious problems in water management, water scarcity, and satellite data is very important to support this in terms of evaluating the resources, of developing tools to support water economy and water quality. And the third one is the urban development and land management. We are in a region where development of urban area is very, very rapid and very active. And it's important to have tools to assess this development and to monitor the impacts on other resources. Though at least these are three sectors where remote sensing, satellite data, and space technologies are very important and very helpful to support project management decision maker.
And for you too, the strategy to address these needs and these sector needs is through national capacity, partnership, commercial solution in the market. What do you prioritize today to answer these needs?
The strategy, as I explained in my presentation, is based on a mix to develop first national capacities and to be able to combine, to use, to produce information from all the sources. And the second one is to have this gradual approach. So to access satellite information is based on what is available on the market on a commercial basis, but also develop other resources to answer these needs and other strategic needs that require a national capacity.
Valentin, on your side?
Me? I think it was to you.
I think it was more, it was to you. I mean, what's the strategy to address the needs that of the sectors that you are that you mentioned through national solution, partnership, commercial combination of all? Or is there a priority given towards how to respond to these needs?
Okay, so just in terms of the modality, I put a framework together in one of my slides around how the program should be structured. And when the agency was conceptualized, it was never the intention for the agency to fully implement the entire space program in the agency. Mm-hmm. And effectively, if you look at our mandate, a key part of our mandate is essentially to support and capacitate the industry to help build some of the applications or the satellites or whatever you. So our key focus is then how do we support the industry? And obviously human capital development is very key. Mm-hmm. And obviously, to some extent, if you're looking for, let's say, applications, you don't want every industry player to duplicate infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So we might take the responsibility from an agency perspective to say, okay, we'll set up a high-performance computing platform, but you can come in and use that platform and develop your applications on the platform, as an example. Okay. So those are the kinds of things that we are looking at from an agency perspective to enable the industry to actually be supported in that fact.
Okay. Camille, as a supplier, what's your view in terms of application driving your business? Where is the driving sectors? What are your priorities?
I think the priority, well, in terms of application, nothing new, but I mean, it's still some challenging. But let's say agriculture is a very important segment in China. But only from the end user point of view, an end user in China have some problem in the agriculture application. Actually, it's the same problem outside China. It's not only limited to the region. So in terms of application, I think for driver, you have agriculture, which is a very big market that in terms of data use, but in terms of the commercial value, it's not a high value market, let's say. And also some new application like infrastructure, that in China, but also in Africa, there are lots of urbanization and planning. So this type of application is driver in the more in the application side, because they are not the user in the past that they know what is satellite. So it is a driver, but at the same time, it's a huge challenge because they don't know what is satellite at all, and it is very hard to get them involved or, I mean, procure some services on this side. So for me, I can see that we for sure how to get involved the end user, but also talk between the agency, because at the end, today, you have all the satellite data, but I don't think that is the problem of technology, but it's more how to teach people to use it and to merge all this technology together.
I think there was a question over there.
Yes, my name is Christina. I'm running a small commercial company in Norway. Pardon my voice, I have a cold. Mr. Aladani, you touched upon the topic of interoperability. And Cami, you presented that there's a number of very interesting data sources or satellites coming and already there, including the GF5. We work with forest industry, more specifically to try to reduce disease outbreaks. So we want to work in every region of the world, but we need data. So for now, we focused on Europe because we have an easier access to data. But being a small company, we do not want necessarily to download data over all the world to be able to do our service. We just want to develop software on top of a cloud somewhere. What's the business model, not only in interoperability in between missions, so having orbits that somehow synchronize or align very well, but also in terms of data formats, but also in terms of data access. So how can a small Norwegian company that wants to develop a global forest disturbance service use your data products to do our service without us needing to invest in a heavy ICT infrastructure?
I think it was to you. I don't know if you...
Very interesting and tricky question, I think. The challenge today is how to develop services. Accessibility of data, I think it will be easy today with this high waves of information. But when accessing this data, the problem is how we can provide information how we can process different sources of information to create value-added services to end users. And I totally agree with you that today each operator is working in its place, and there is not enough discussion. The ideal objective is to have a sort of norm that enable the satellite operator to provide information on a specific norm. So it will be easy for the service developers to use and to develop softwares that take in consideration all of this. I think that the community should find a forum to discuss these issues and try to develop specific norms for satellite data images, so it will be more easy for the small industries to develop services for this.
Maybe one last question. You discussed, you two actually, the issues of the challenges, and actually you also, Camille, some challenges about raising awareness end users. Often an issue, especially in Earth observation, is to demonstrate the benefits, to educate end users. So I'd like to know what you do, how you work with the end users to raise these capabilities, and what's the feedback of end users in terms of the challenges of the use of the data. Jorge, maybe do you work? Do you have some programs in the UN to raise awareness, educate users, showcase benefits, and demonstration program? Maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I mean that's what that's our main activity. We are raising capacity. We are building capacity in developing countries. That's mainly what we are doing. But I'm going to be a little bit, maybe politically incorrect here. We in the space industry, and I count myself because I have been working in the space industry for more than 10 years. We normally neglect users a lot. It's a reality. We have our satellites, we have our new shiny satellites, and we say, bah, it's just users, they don't know how to use space technology. We have to involve users since the beginning. It's this sentence that Cami was saying before is that, I mean, they don't understand agriculture. They don't understand how to use space. Of course, they don't understand how to use space. I mean, they are caring about, okay, I have a plant here, it's dying because there is a drought. I want to have a drought warning alert. So that's all what we have to provide. And that's what, with the user, we'd be happy with that. So we have to involve much more the users, make them aware of what space can do. And it's not the other way around. We have a satellite, use it. No. It's user, I have this need, give me a solution. And space can do a lot. It's amazing, can do a lot. It's just, we need to talk more with the users.
Quickly, if you can explain what you do and what's the feedback from the end users to raise awareness. I think after we have to close the session, but I think it would be a good conclusion to see how you work with your end users.
I'm not going to speak specifically from the users, but I think another constituency which is very important is your political principles, because they essentially provide the funding for your space program, and you have to motivate them. And the unfortunate reality, and I say this tongue-in-cheek, politicians have a very short memory. There's something called the half-life of memory. What you know today, a year later, you probably know half of it, and then it carries on going. It's exponential decay. So you have to continuously reaffirm the value proposition of space to your political principles.
So do you measure benefits in your country?
Well, it's interesting you ask the question, because right now there's a socio-economic benefits assessment that's being done in South Africa, and this is like 7 years down the line, and you still have to motivate all the time that space is still important and relevant for the country.
But space is also an investment, and decision makers need to understand that it's an investment.
Exactly, yeah.
Dries.
Well, I think that one of the key elements to develop applications is training and capacity building. The CRTS was created at the beginning to develop applications. We are not technology-driven, but application-driven. And we noticed that to achieve this objective, we have to educate the users. And we do a lot of job in this, and we have an annual training program destined to the end user and how they can use this technology, how can they develop applications. And the challenge is evolving all the time, and we are facing new demands, new requirements. And I think that the issue is to translate this technology in terms of services. This is how we can answer this demand.
Okay, thank you. Last word, Camille, before we close. You want to closing remarks?
Yeah, just a remark. I think that from a point of view of the commercial side, that's try to get involved the end user, to ask them what they need, and also to teach them. It is a very important step for us.
So we'll close the session. Thank you very much for the panelists. Please join me to thank our panelists today for the discussion, and we'll move to the next session afterwards. Thank you.